Hello, we are back discussing Chapter 9, Measurement and Geometry, looking at Lesson 1, Perimeter and Circumference, and this is the guided practice. So we're going to go ahead and find the perimeter of each polygon. So we know the perimeter is like finding the distance around the figure, so we're just going to say P equals 5 plus 8 plus 11, 5 plus 8 plus 11. And then we would add up those values, and we get 5 plus 8 is 13, and 13 plus 11, 3 plus 1 is 4, oh, I should write it here, and then 1 plus 1 is 2. So that means the perimeter ends up being 24 feet. Okay, so I want you to go ahead on these problems, write an equation, do your little work off to the side, and make sure you write your answer and label it with the units. Okay, number 3, when you get to number 3, this is a square, which means all of the side lengths are the same. Okay, so they're all equal to 9. So I want you to go ahead and work out problem 2 and 3. There's our friend, the pause dragon, remembering you to pause your device, work out problem 2 and 3. When you get done, press play, and we'll talk about it in a bit. All right, we're back. Let's see how you did on problem 2. We're finding the perimeter, so we're just going to add up all these sides. We have 6 plus 6 plus 9 plus 7. Okay, I'm just going to add these left to right. So 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 9 plus 7 would be 16. I'm going to go ahead and figure out what 12 plus 16 is. 2 plus 6 is 8, 1 plus 1 is 2. So the perimeter is 28 inches. So if you got that one right, woohoo, good job. Okay, on to problem 3. We have a quadrilateral. There are 4 sides. It's a square. They're all equal to 9. So it's basically going to be 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 9. All of these are 9. 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 9. So 9 plus 9 4 times is really just the same thing as 4 times 9, which is going to be 36 centimeters. So if you got that one right, woohoo, good job. On to problem 4, 5, and 6. So for problem 4, 5, and 6, it says find the perimeter of each rectangle. Since we're dealing with rectangles, we know that we can use the formula perimeter equals 2L plus 2W. All right, we know that our length is 11, so I'm going to say L equals 11. I'm defining my terms, and then the width is 9. So I'm going to say comma W equals 9. Then I'm going to substitute those values into my equation. So the perimeter equals 2 times L, L is 11, plus 2 times W, and W is 9. So now it just becomes an order of operations problem. The perimeter equals, I have to do multiplication first. 2 times 11 is 22, plus 2 times 9 is 18. Now I just need to add those values. 22 plus 18, I'm doing this off to the side. 2 plus 8 is 10, write the 0, carry the 1. 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So the perimeter equals 40 yards. And there's my answer, so I'm going to put a box around it. So now I want you to go ahead and try problems 5 and problem 6. Actually, I'm going to do 5 because it's dealing with, well, no, you go ahead and do 5 and 6. So go ahead and make sure that you use this as the guide. You write the equation, define your terms, stick it all in, solve it, and figure it out. All right, so go ahead, press pause, work out 5 and 6. And when you get done, press play, and we'll see how you did. Okay, we're back with problem 5. We are going to find the perimeter of a rectangle, so we are first going to write our equation. Perimeter equals 2 times L times, wait, that's plus, 2L plus 2W. My length is equal to 5.5, and my width is equal to 3.5. I'm going to substitute in those values into the equation. So P equals 2 times 5.5 plus 2 times W is 3.5. Now, you know whenever you're multiplying and there's a mixed number, you need to change that into an improper fraction. So we're going to go 2 times and change this into an improper fraction, which would be 2 times 5, which is 10, plus 1 is 11. and then you just keep the same number in the denominator, plus we have to change this improper fraction to, this mixed number to an improper fraction, which would be 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. Keep the same number, 2. So we're multiplying those. So I'm going to make this 2 over 1. So now we're just multiplying fractions. Whenever you multiply fractions, first you look to cross cancel. So I see that there's a common factor of 2. 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 2 one time. This ends up being 1 times 11, which is 11, over 1 times 1, which is 1, plus, over here, this is 2 over 1 times 7 over 2. I look to cross cancel. These 2's cancel out. 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 2 one time. And then I multiply across. I get 1 times 7, which is 7, over 1 times 1, which is 1. This is basically the same thing as saying P equals 11 plus 7, which means that our perimeter, 11 plus 7, is 18 meters. And that's our answer, so we're going to put a box around it. Boom. If you got that one right, perfect. Great job. Okay, let's go on to problem 6 and see how you did. So for problem 6, we are dealing with a rectangle again, so I'm going to write my formula. The perimeter equals 2 times L plus 2 times W. I'm going to define my terms. The length is, we'll call it 5, and the width is 11. Okay, then we're going to substitute those values in. So we have that the P equals 2 times L, which is 5, plus 2 times W, which is 11. Now, order of operations states that we have to do the multiplication before the addition, so that's what we're going to do. Perimeter equals 2 times 5, which is 10, plus 2 times 11, which is 22. And if you add 10 to 22, you end up with 32. So it's 32 inches, and then put a box around it. So if you got all of those right, wonderful job, and let's go on to the next page. So for the next page, we are going and we're finding the circumference of each circle to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that there. Okay, so this first problem, I see that I'm dealing with a diameter. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that I use the diameter formula, which is C equals pi times the diameter. I'm going to define my terms. The diameter is equal to 8. So that means I end up with C equals pi times 8. Well, we're going to be using 3.14 for pi, and 3.14 is an approximation, so when I substitute that in, I have to use this approximation here. So it's going to be 3.14 substituted in for pi, 3.14 times 8. To figure that out, I'm going to go ahead and do that on the side over here. 3.14 times 8. 8 times 4 is 32. Write the 2, carry the 3. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 3 is 11. Write the 1, carry the 1. 8 times 3 is 24 plus 1 would make it 25. Since I'm multiplying decimals, I need to figure out how many decimal places I need. That's 1, 2, which means my answer has to have 2 decimal places as well, which means we end up with 25.12. But oh wait, we have to round it to the nearest tenth. This is the tenth, which means this number right here has to be a 5 or above to round that up, and it's not. So that means our circumference is approximately 25.1 feet. So that's our answer. We're going to put a box around it. So notice how we started with the equation. We defined our terms. We substituted in. And we did our work off to the side, wrote our answer, put a box around it, and boom, that's how you do these problems. Okay, so now it is your turn to go ahead and do problems 8, 9, and 10. Notice that this is a radius, so you're going to be using the circumference equals 2 pi r formula when you do this one. All right, so now it is time to go ahead and pause your device, work out problems 8, 9, and 10. When you get done, press play, and we'll go over them. All right, see you in a bit. See you in a bit. You can do it. All right, we're back with problem 8. Let's see how you did. So we're finding the circumference. We have the radius. So we're going to use the formula circumference equals 2 pi r. With this problem, our radius is equal to 7, so I'm going to say r equals 7. And I'm going to go ahead and substitute that in. So I end up with c equals 2 pi times 7. Now, because everything's multiplied, I can go ahead and combine these first, which means the circumference is 2 times 7, which is 14 pi. Now I'm going to go ahead and substitute 3.14 in for pi, and when I do that, it becomes an approximation. So I'm going to be figuring out 14 times 3.14. I'm going to do that off to the side right here. 3.14 times 7. 7 times 4 is 28. Write the 8, carry the 2. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 is 9. 7 times 3 is 21. Then I'm going to have 2 decimal places. 1, 2 there, which means my answer has to have 2 decimal places. This is a 21, which means this is where the decimal goes. So now I have to round this to the nearest tenth, which would be right here. Well, this rounds up because it's 5 or above. It's going to make this go to the next one, which would be a 0, which then rounds this one up to a 2. So our answer for the circumference is going to be approximately 22 centimeters. Boom. If you got that one right, great job. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to problem 9. So for problem 9, we have a diameter, so we're going to be using the formula circumference equals pi d. Our diameter is equal to 5. We're going to substitute 5 in for d, which would give us circumference equals pi times 5. We're going to be using the 3.14 for pi. So when you put that in, I need to have my approximation sign there because it's approximate value. It's not the exact thing for pi, but it's really, really super close. So now we have 3.14 times pi. I'm going to go ahead and do that calculation off to the side right over here. 5 times 4 is 20. Write the 0, carry the 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, now I just need to, since I'm multiplying with decimals, there are 2 decimal places here, 1, 2. That means my answer needs to have 2 decimal places as well, which means I end up with 15.70. I need to round it to the nearest tenth, but this is a 0, so that really doesn't do anything. So my answer ends up being circumference is approximately 15.7 yards. And then we put a box around it. If you got that one right, good job. Let's go ahead and move on to problem 10. So problem 10, we have a radius, so we're going to be dealing with the formula circumference equals 2 pi r, where our radius is equal, we're defining our terms, is equal to 9 inches. So you need to have all of these on your problems. If you don't, you need to write them in. Okay? Then we're going to substitute 9 in for r, so we end up with c equals 2 times pi times 9. Now, since this is all multiplication, I can multiply 2 times 9 first, which ends up being 18 pi. And then I'm going to go ahead and substitute 3.14 in for pi. When I do that, it becomes an approximation. So I have 18 times 3.14. To determine what that value is, I'm going to go off to the side and do that little multiplication problem here. 8 times 4 is 32, write the 2, carry the 3. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 3 is 11, write the 1, carry the 1. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 1 would make it 25. I'm going to write a 0 because now we're moving to the tens place. 4 times 1 is 4, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 3 is 3. Now we add. 2 plus 0 is 2, 1 plus 4 is 5, 5 plus 1 is 6, 2 plus 3 is 5. Since we're multiplying decimals, I need to count up the decimal places in the problem, and there's 1, 2, which means my answer also has to have 1, 2 decimals in it, which means my final answer is going to be 56.52. But wait, we have to round it to the nearest tenth, so I look here at this place value. It has to be a 5 or above to round this up to a 6, and it is not. So that means our final answer is approximately 56.5 inches. And that's my answer, so I'm going to put a box around it. Perfect. If you got that one right, awesome job. Okay, on to problem 11. Problem 11 says that the diameter of a clock is 7 inches. Okay, so I'm going to draw a picture. A clock is right here. It's a circle. Here's the center. The diameter is 7 inches. Okay, what is the circumference of the clock? Now this time it says use 22 over 7 for pi. Now 22 over 7 is actually the same thing as pi. And we can, remember, let's talk about pi for a minute. We said pi is equal to 3.14, or we said it's approximately 3.14, right? But pi is equal to 22 over 7, and that's not an approximate value. That's an equal thing. If I take my calculator here, and I go enter, and I turn it on and clear it out, and I go 22 divided by 7, guess what I end up with? 3.142857143, and it just keeps going on and on forever. And so that is the actual version of pi in fractional form. So this is the same thing as pi, it's just in the form of a fraction. So that's what we're going to use this time instead of 3.14. So we're going to find the diameter of the clock. The diameter of the clock is 7 inches. What is the circumference of the clock? So since we have the diameter, we're going to use the formula C equals pi d. And d, our variable for the diameter, is 7 inches. So we're going to go ahead and substitute that in for d, and we end up with C equals pi times 7. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute the 22 over 7 for pi. Okay, I'm going to substitute it in fractional form. What I end up with is C equals 22 over 7 times 7. And now we're just multiplying fractions. And do you see what happens? It's really, really super cool. And since 22 over 7 is an exact value, I don't need to put approximate. I can keep it as an equal sign. So then when we're multiplying fractions, we always look to cross cancel first. So we have a common factor of 7. 7 goes into 7 one time, and 7 goes into 7 one time here. And then we just multiply across. Circumference equals 22 times 1, which is 22, over 1 times 1, which is 1, which is just the same exact thing as the circumference equaling 22 over 1, which is 22 inches. And that is our circumference, 22 inches. So, yeah. All right, awesome job on all those problems, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.